Great to have you, and thanks for joining, Natasha. Welcome. So today we're going to cover some tried and true evidence-based retention and recruitment strategies. We're going to talk about selecting new staff that are most likely to stay, and we're going to discuss the concept of a just culture. We always return every time we meet with you to our bundle of high value interventions that we built from two previous phases of our work in South Carolina. And we focus throughout these webinar series on these bundles, if you will, that fall into three specific columns around management practices, financial investments, and HR practices. All have been vetted, all have been researched, all of the ideas in here work. Um, and in order to achieve high retention, low turnover, low absenteeism, we've learned that facilities in South Carolina use many of the strategies on this slide, not just a couple. It really is about the volume of evidence-based practices that you put into place. So let's talk about retention and then recruitment. Boosting morale and promoting the sense of community and the role that leaders play in that in nursing homes has been a theme that we've discussed in previous webinars. And we've also seen, especially in phase two, how facilities could make some low cost, what we call low cost, high yield investments that bring up morale of their staff. Throughout phase two, prior to our kickoff, we went facility to facility, and we actually looked in facility break rooms, and some of the break rooms were pretty sad. And we called that out to the administrator and director of nurses that, this is a fairly low hanging fruit, as we say. If you want to get your staff just a little bit happier, invest in fixing up the break room. You don't really have to get corporate involved. You can pretty much do this with your maintenance budget, some new microwave ovens, maybe a new refrigerator, a new table and chairs, and some paint. Staff notice these things. And when you call these things out that you're doing at general staff meetings or community meetings, it emphasizes the point that you care about your staff, you care about their well-being, and you care about their comfort while they're working at the facility. Of course, the bathrooms that the staff use the most could use some attention, especially in old nursing homes. Many nursing homes, as you know, in South Carolina were built in 1960 or 1970. You might be blessed to be in a fairly new senior living community. But if you're not, you're likely in an old nursing home that was built decades ago. So focus on bathrooms and break rooms and little things that you can do. I've been a nursing home administrator for 35 years. I was never blessed to work in a new nursing home. Always had very old, decrepit facilities. But we did what we could, and it's amazing what some paint will do to not only make the place look better, but bring up morale. Staff notice these things, and they really do care about where they work, where they eat, where they go to the bathroom, and it's important to make those investments. We also have learned how important plaques and trophies and rewarding units and neighborhoods, not just about driving data to where it needs to be, but also just building community. Throughout my career, I've always spent a lot of time writing thank you cards to key members of the staff who are doing well. Those cards are always mailed to their homes. But it wasn't just me. I would bring blank thank you cards to department head meetings and pass out blank thank you cards and have each department head write a thank you card to a staff member of their choice. And we would mail out 14 thank you cards that day. So thank you cards, so low cost, so impactful. If you want to secure a new hire to stay in your organization, Send them a thank you card. Hey, we're so glad we hired you. You're doing so well so far. I think you'll be a great fit here. You know, you want to make a difference. You want a thank you card to go on your staff member's refrigerator with a magnet. And that's what will happen if you send it to their homes. And be prepared, because many staff will walk up to you, of course, and say they never received a card from a manager in their whole career. So it's a really good habit to have. So those appreciation notes, investing in more and better PTO, making sure that people get a day off on their birthday or anniversaries, writing birthday cards to staff, writing thank you and anniversary cards to staff on their anniversary date. These sound like very minuscule things from a manager's busy day, but these are the little things that keep staff coming to work every day in a nursing home. We talked about meals in the past. Many of you are offering very low cost meals, which is fantastic. Maybe you could also invest in purchasing some scrubs, or bringing in an organization that sells scrubs and getting a 25% discount on those scrubs that the organization will pay. Flexible scheduling, of course, is what nursing homes are doing now. But really, the key to retention is hiring full-time staff with benefits. Benefits are the key to retention. If you are top heavy with part-time on-call staff who don't have any benefits, those are organizations that tend to have more turnover year after year, especially if those benefits improve year after year after year, of course. Some facilities have also tested allowing their staff to have immediate access to wages that are earned daily, as opposed to waiting for a paycheck every 2 weeks. This is something that the registry organizations, the contract nurses all get. It's questionable whether or not this is an effective recruitment or retention strategy. In essence, what we've learned is that most staff prefer the every 2 week paycheck that kind of keeps their budget on track, and pulling wages daily just seems to be too chaotic for them. So we really haven't heard that this is a real positive in terms of retention. More ideas to consider. Have a Rookie of the Month program for your new hires. So anyone under 100 days might be considered for a Rookie of the Month award or Employee of the Month award for your top performing staff. It's really always been amazing to me how many nursing homes out there don't recognize the Employee of the Month. Just their best performers never get recognized. And that's a problem. High performing organizations should constantly be putting their top performers in a position of recognition and rewards. You want your top performers to stay. You want staff to emulate the behaviors of the top performers. And the only way they'll do that is when the top performers are recognized. Improving people's name badges also can build community. In so many nursing homes, no one can read the names on the name badges, or the name badges are turned around so you can't read people's names. It's really important. Community building can be so basic as to ensure that people can read each other's names and know each other's names. It's awfully hard to build and develop relationships with people in a nursing home if you don't know their name and you have to ask for their name. Some recruitment best practices to consider are these. As we know now, it's a real, it's an online approach, right? But so often we see that those online message boards and advertisements on websites never get updated. And you have so much data, so many probably great pictures of community building events, that the recommendation here is that every quarter you go and look at your own job postings and improve them. Put some new data in there. Put some pictures of staff celebrating events in that advertisement. Show what the quality of work life really is in your organization. And if you have high staff satisfaction scores or high quality measures, show that to the staff you're trying to recruit to. You want staff to be attracted to you because you're winning, you're successful, and good staff want to work for a winning nursing home. They want to work for a successful hospital or nursing home. So make sure that you're advertising how good you are if you have those high positive rates. And as while it's so important to enhance how you look online, don't forget that sometimes you can find your best staff by posting flyers in the local laundromats around your nursing home. I found so many good staff just by making sure that we put flyers in the laundromats and in the grocery stores. Um, this is where I have found the most amazing housekeepers, CNAs, dietary aides. So while yes, online presence is super important, make sure that you're also doing what we did in the 1970s, right? Because that's where the hardworking people are doing their laundry in laundromats and doing their grocery shopping in the grocery stores right around your nursing home. And when it comes to selection, we have a few tips to offer as well. Sometimes we're so focused on the online recruitment method that we don't even interview staff that walk through our doors. I've noticed we still have employees seeking jobs that just walk into nursing homes. And it's really important that the nursing home interview that person on the spot. After all, we post online ads, we respond to the applicants, we try to get them to an interview. Yet here's a person, a live person, right in the lobby who's looking for a job. So the recommendation here is that you have a process of dropping everything if a human being walked in and is looking for a job and you have openings. What you want to do is you meet and greet that person and just take them on a tour. Hey, you ever been here before? Let me show you around. The tour really isn't to show the applicant around, it's for you to observe who they really are and to engage in small talk with them so you can learn about their character traits. So as you walk through the nursing home, you're going to want to really be observing how they greet strangers, whether or not they smile and say hello. You're going to introduce them to residents and staff, and you're going to see how they react. You're watching them. It's all a test. As you're walking with them, you're asking questions related to their character traits, and you're listening very carefully to what they say. Where have you worked in the past? Really, can you tell me about some of the residents that you have a relationship with there? Oh, um, what do you do with your free time is the self-esteem question, right? What do you do with your free time? Tell me about your family. Where do you live? How did you get here, right? These are all key questions that you'll want to learn when you're walking through the facility with the applicant. And consider the 5 smile rule. If this applicant can't smile at you, doesn't smile at the residents, doesn't smile at people you introduce them to, they're likely not going to smile if you hire them. So just be aware, right? I have always used the 5 smile rule. If this applicant can't smile 5 times during this tour, I wonder if they're going to be a good fit. Other interview tips. So you took the tour, now's your chance to sit down with them and just go through the interview, right? But the questions are important. Um, the opportunity to sit with someone maybe who wasn't even expecting to be interviewed is a great time to interview them. So consider the right questions, open-ended, behavior-based. Tell me about some things that you've done for residents that went above and beyond the call of duty. Tell me about a time you encountered an angry family member related to her loved one's care. How did you handle that? What would you do if you saw a coworker yelling at a resident and shaking their arm, right? So ask these types of questions related to real situations in a nursing home and see what they say. The book Good to Great devoted a whole chapter to this concept of the best organizations always focus on first who, then what. And they focus on who they hire, right? So the key to success, they said, the key to adapting to a changing world is who you hire. Managers don't necessarily motivate and manage people if they hire the right people. They emphasized if you hire the wrong people, if you hire grumpy people, if you hire people who don't smile, if you hire people who walk really slow when you're walking around the facility with them, then you're hiring the whole person, right? The resume might look good, their experience might be awesome, but in a nursing home, everything is everything, right? And so one grumpy people, one bad apple really can spoil the whole bunch in a nursing home. If you're still using nurses from agencies with about from registries or agencies, which about half the nursing homes are, here's a couple of tips that we've learned from our phase 2 of our project. Some of the best practices, especially in the when we were deep in the pandemic, we learned these was, of course, not every staffing agency is the same. Some are better than others, some are more honest than others, some really take the time to hire and the good nurses with who've met certain competency testings, others do not. So vet the agency before you start working with them. You might consider at this point in September meeting with a couple of agencies to do some surge planning, assuming that you're going to have a big outbreak and that a bunch of staff will be out. Doing some surge planning with the agency for the winter months would be a smart thing to do. You also want to know whether or not the nurses have been vaccinated or the agency doesn't care. And you likely want to work with an agency that's only employing and sending you nurses that are up to date with their COVID and flu vaccines. If you get a good registry nurse, you'll want to treat them like your own. Of course, supporting them, orienting them, monitoring them, rewarding them, and working with the agency to try to secure them for a few months. We interviewed a DON in Hawaii who said these things about her best practices when she was interviewed about using agency. She said, when the registry nurse shows up, it's a blessing and we should let everybody know. And it's all our job to make sure that that registry nurse actually gives good care here and is successful here. And so she says she usually shows up at the huddle and makes sure the registry nurse is introduced, that the person's recognized, that people say hello. And then they make sure that they give the registry nurses not the worst assignment at the nursing home, not the toughest assignment, hoping that they'll do well, but they give them a manageable assignment. And if they're going to need that registry nurse for a few months or weeks, they're going to give them that same assignment over and over and over again. And then the DON said, then I always pull the registry nurse in my office, give her a pat on the back, offer her some water and a snack, because I need her to do well today. And this is how I make sure she'll do well. And we're going to finish our discussion this afternoon by talking about a just culture. What we learned from the 8 facilities in South Carolina that did so well over the course of the pandemic, keeping their deaths and keeping their positive cases so low in 2020 and 2021, we learned that it all really started with their staff stability, care of the residents to stay and prevent and mitigate the spread of COVID. And they did so by being extremely consistent with their approaches, obsessed, if you will, with infection control, but they also held staff to high expectations. Staff met those expectations because they trusted the leaders. They had mutual respect of one another in those trying times. At the same time, they showed over and over again through word and deed and practice and policy and procedure that they valued the staff and they communicated with them, and they went overboard with that communication to ensure that the staff knew of the ever-changing COVID guidance at the time. From Susan Eaton, we learned that in order to have low turnover, high attendance, and high performance, you need these business model approaches, which is so simple but so complex to put into place. A positive chain of high quality leadership at all levels of the organization. So developing your charge nurses, developing your CNA peer mentors, making sure that there's administrators and training and assistant DONs and training. When you put in layers of positive leadership positions in an organization, you tend to have higher performance in a nursing home. Also valuing day-to-day, the staff day-to-day, as I said, in policy, practice, word, and deed. People in high performance organizations with low turnover have managers who spend a lot of time doing rounds, a lot of time ensuring the staff know that they're valued. They also have high performance, high commitment HR policies where staff notice that the policies themselves from human resources are encouraging them to stay because they're rewarded each year that they stay. Work systems aligned with serving organizational goals and sufficiency of staff. High turnover occurs in nursing homes that have high absenteeism and low staffing levels. It's been proven over and over again that you have to have sufficient staff for it to be a quality job. And if staffing is inconsistent and low to start with, nursing assistants and LVNs bear the brunt of that. And nobody wants to work in a nursing home where you can't deliver care humanely. So let's talk about this concept of a just culture and to consider thinking about your culture and where we want to be. In a punitive culture, which let's say occurred pre-pandemic or before 1960, many nursing homes were led to believe that employees were responsible for perfect performance, and nurses were responsible to make sure that an admission audit didn't have any errors at all, and that CNA ADL charting was 100% on time every single day. Perfect performance was expected in certain organizations, and employees who didn't meet that expectation were disciplined in a punitive culture. A breakthrough occurred when a professor from Harvard put out there in testimony before Congress that we keep making errors over and over and again in healthcare because we punish people for making mistakes. So a just culture is really defined by these 6 bullet points. But the key to a just culture is to remember that in the best organizations, staff feel comfortable reporting when they make a med error. CNAs feel comfortable when they report a stage 1 pressure sore on a resident that they take care of every day. In nursing homes where no one reports reddened skin on a resident's bottom, or no one reports that they didn't do someone's shower, so they couldn't do the full body check of the resident. When no nurses ever report that they made a mistake with their med pass, those should be disconcerting situations, which indicate that staff are afraid of what might happen if they do report these things. In a just culture, people aren't afraid. Huddles are an excellent way to ensure that people know that they can report errors, and where we can celebrate when a CNA notices a stage 1 pressure sore so that we can take care of it early. If we only find stage 2 or 3 pressure sores and never find stage 1s, that would be a cause for concern. So there's 4 corners of a just culture. Again, it's creating an open and fair and transparent environment. And we do that by saying to ourselves as managers, when errors occur or when we get a deficiency, we always look in the mirror first, examining how the organization or how the systems or how the staffing may have led a staff member to make an error. And then from that, we debrief rather than blame to create a learning culture. Debriefs happen a lot in learning organizations where managers discuss errors without blame and discuss how the organization or the systems or the policies may have contributed to it and how they can redesign the system so it's just a little bit safer. But they also talk about staff members being accountable to make good choices and make safe choices in order to reduce errors and reduce adverse events. So to err is human. There's 3 behaviors here that we have to consider when we're faced with an employee who made a mistake that might have led to a deficiency or an adverse event with a resident. So consider human error. And that is simply someone forgetting to do something, right? We all forget, and let's face it, nurses, CNAs, they have a lot of things that they have to remember, and people can forget. So for example, I didn't do the Q2 hour check on Mrs. Jones. I just forgot, right? An at-risk error is different than a human error. This is an employee's behavior that increases the risk, where risk by the employee is not really recognized, or it's mistakenly believed to be justified. So for example, a CNA might say, yes, I did a 1-person transfer and I knew that she was a 2-person transfer resident because the resident was demanding to go to the bathroom right away. I could have slowed the resident down and got another CNA, but I mistakenly believed that that risk was justified. Reckless behavior is a little bit different than human error and at-risk error. Reckless behavior is when the employee made a choice and consciously disregarded a substantial and justifiable risk. For example, yes, I knew the Hoyer lift was in need of repair. I knew the sling was in need of repair, but I grabbed it anyway out of the back office because I just couldn't find the other lift and I wanted to stop looking. You know, in the past, I noticed that pretty much every plan of correction that we wrote, we called out employees and said they need to be more careful, and we do indicate that we would do an in-service and that the DON would monitor for performance. Not very effective, right? In order to do better next time, as I mentioned, looking in the mirror and really trying to remove those opportunities for the next employee to make the next error, right? So for example, I once got a deficiency because staff kept throwing their dirty gloves on the shower room floor. Now, should we blame the employees or should we go look at the shower itself and see why they're throwing the gloves on the floor? When we do so, we notice, wow, there's not a barrel in the right spot for the employees to throw their gloves. So let's put the barrel there. It's not the employee's fault. It's not hundreds of employees are throwing their gloves on the floor. If we just put a barrel in the right spot for them, they would throw their gloves in the barrel, right? Some of these solutions can be so simple, but we want to move away from, again, blaming the staff for throwing the gloves on the floor and start to look at the environment and the organization and the policies that may have led to the error. Another example is an employee who walks out of a COVID positive resident's room in full PPE to discard her PPE in the barrel in the hallway. A facility that I know got a deficiency for this, and they were quite upset for the employee for doing that. However, the employee didn't have a barrel to discard her PPE in the inside door of the resident's room before she left. So they had to buy barrels, more barrels, a lot more barrels to prevent the next error from occurring. What causes employees in nursing homes to make errors over and over and over again? Some of the factors, of course, that cause that are those organizational conditions that we've been discussing. Factors that increase at-risk behaviors and poor choices amongst employees include these: a high workload, too many residents to take care of, not enough staff; fatigue; procedure and policy design flaws; poor lighting; noise; lots of distractions; coming into the facility already stressed out with personnel issues; lack of resources; lack of linen; lack of gel cushions; lack of pressure reducing mattresses; lack of Hoyer lifts. I once had two CNAs getting a fist fight over the only working Hoyer lift. That fist fight, of course, we were ready to discipline both employees, fire them both until we realized that we were to blame. We only had one working Hoyer lift. When we encounter these mistakes, try to put them in three buckets associated with human error, at-risk behavior, or reckless behavior, and respond accordingly. So when someone makes a human error, we want to consider, again, how we can redesign our organization to prevent the next human from making the same error. So we do that by changing policies and procedures, doing new training, and then also looking and changing the environment. When people make at-risk behavior choices, believing that the risk is insignificant or justified due to a lack of time or their competence, you manage through removing those incentives for at-risk behaviors, creating incentives for right choices, and increasing their situational awareness. For example, giving the CNA better talking points to the resident demanding to go to the bathroom, and giving her some key talking points to tell the resident, you must wait until I can get a second person to help with your transfer. Reckless behavior, this is these employees that know it's risky, but they disregard it. They're just not concerned. You manage through disciplinary action or remedial action, and sometimes termination. So a couple other examples we have here. An example of a human error, we've already mentioned this, perhaps missed initials on a MAR or missed a med. In these situations, we look for system issues, we console the employee, we might thank the employee for admitting their error, and we acknowledge and get talking with the employee in a debrief of what may have led them to make the error. Were they tired? Were they distracted? So we encourage staff to be more mindful of these factors that cause them to make errors. If a nurse initiated treatment for someone, didn't get a doctor's order, again, we'd analyze why did she make that choice? We'd talk through the choice and the process the employee made, how they made the choice. So you're really examining and questioning with the employee, not a blaming kind of way, but how did you conclude? You'd want to know that that was the right choice when this really over here was the choice that you needed to make. And then finally, of course, the reckless behavior like falsifying a record, knowingly not administering a treatment and documenting that you did over and over again, or copying and pasting the same weekly summary over and over and over again. Again, your organization has a process for this, but I'll just say out loud, the best performing nursing homes fire people for actions like this. So it's a balancing act, and we've seen this slide before. Good managers are constantly balancing performance and accountability with compassion and flexibility for the staff. And when you achieve that balance, you achieve high performance. So a couple of videos here of some of the facilities we visited to emphasize these points.
And it's my philosophy, but I think everybody on our senior leadership team has the same philosophy. We do treat everybody with respect, and we talk about treating our patients as a whole person, but it's the same with staff as well. You have to treat your staff as a whole person.
But sometimes it can be really hard to sift through the, okay, I'm just calling out to call out versus something is really going on in my family. But myself, I'm a huge benefit of the doubt giver. I really am. And sometimes it's to a fault. And I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt that, I really don't know. Sometimes you really don't know what's going on with people. Sometimes you may not really know that something tough is happening. And so I try to be compassionate with that and talk to everybody like I want them to talk to me.
So just to summarize on the just culture, when you achieve this, of course, staff are expected to be really mindful and looking at the risks around them, recognizing their own potentials for making those risks based on the environment, based on how they feel, based on how they came into work that day. When people are reporting small errors, stage 1 pressure sores, near falls that they prevented, these are signs of a healthy organization, of an organization that's a just culture. When you can get staff to help you redesign some systems to make them safe, it's critically important in terms of organizations who are making the good choices here. To lead a just culture, again, talk about risks, talk about choices, talk about at-risk behaviors, be transparent about some of this in your debriefs with staff. Deficiencies aren't always, of course, a sign of a failing facility. Sometimes truly staff do make errors, but it's always best to look inward first to determine if the organization was a contributing factor. Great. So here's our last slide for me. We have a constantly kind of taking that first slide of our columns and all the various bundles of best practices. And here's a different way of looking at it, right? So management practices, financial investments, and HR practices, these are the ways that nursing homes retain their staff, achieve low turnover and low absenteeism. Thank you.